Hey everybody, welcome to Frank's Homestead. Today I'm going to show you 5 maintenance tips on how to get that lawnmower up and running since it's been sitting all winter long and now it's time to cut the grass. And if you stay tuned to the very end of the video, I'll give you a bonus tip on how to fix your lawnmower if it's running but not running very well. Tip number 1, check your fuel. It's possible, and it happens more than you think, that you could be out of fuel, or it's got a little bit of fuel in there and it's old. It's been sitting for 6 months through the winter. Add fresh fuel to it. Get it mixed up. Tip number 2, check your fuel valve. If you have a lawnmower that has one, make sure it's turned so that it's in line with your fuel lines. That's the on position. If it's like that, that means that it's off. Tip number 3, check your oil level. A lot of small engines have a safety shutoff that if the oil level gets too low, it'll automatically turn off or not start at all because it's a safety to keep the engine from blowing up. So check the oil level in your lawnmower to make sure it is up to the recommended level according to the manufacturer. Tip number 4, check your spark plug. It should be discolored, that's normal, but it shouldn't be worn or look like it's melted or have a lot of carbon deposits. If you find any of these items, you can just take the spark plug down to your local automotive store and they should be able to match it up for you. Tip number 5, check your air filter. Take the cover off and look at the air filter and see how clean it is. If it needs to be blown out, then blow it out. Check your air filter to make sure that the rubber around it is in good shape, that none of the paper is torn or ripped or clogged with mud or anything like that. If it is, you'll probably have to go to where you bought your lawnmower and try to replace that filter. Okay, so 99% of the time, those 5 tips that I just showed you are going to resolve any issues you may have when it comes to getting your lawnmower started for the spring. However, sometimes situations happen where maybe you had to mow your grass really quick at the end of the season last fall, and then you put it away, you meant to get back out there and kind of winterize your lawnmower but never got around to it, and then you looked at the spring and said, oh boy, here we go, and you just can't get it to run even after all those 5 tips. Well, here's tip number 6, your bonus tip. I'm going to show you how to fix that. Find your carburetor. This model, it's on the side. Take your cover off and the air filter out. Now, if your carburetor's on the side, you're going to have to tip your lawnmower on its side. Just use a block of wood to set the handle on. If your carburetor's on the top of the machine, you won't need to do this step. Okay, once you got your air filter off, it's tipped on its side. Get some carb cleaner. Doesn't really matter what brand. They all do the same thing. This just happens to be a Napa brand. And what you're looking for is right here is where the intake is for air that goes down into your carburetor. There's always going to be something that looks similar to this. It's got little holes here and there's one on the other side there. The back doesn't have a hole. And what you're going to want to do, make sure you're wearing safety glasses. That's very important. Take your spray nozzle and just spray down in it. Give a generous amount. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to sit and wait. Give it about 10 minutes. Now generally, right in the vicinity of where you sprayed in to the carburetor, you'll see some springs. And it'll do some movement. And what you're going to want to do is, while you're waiting, just kind of work that back and forth. And what that does is, see if you can see inside there. You see that in the throat of the carburetor. Okay, it's moving, and that allows for penetration of the carburetor fluid. So let me explain why we're doing this. It all comes down to your fuel, and it's the ethanol that's in the fuel. Okay, they make ethanol out of corn. The ethanol in the gasoline is going to turn kind of into a gel. And what happens is that in a carburetor, especially on a small engine, the jets and ports and all the little tiny holes that are in a carburetor, it does not take barely anything to clog those up. What happens is when that fuel sits all winter, it will gel up and cause your carburetor not to work very well. And what the carburetor cleaner does is actually melt all that gelling from that ethanol and will cause it to run better. Now, most of the time you can do this technique without having to tear the carburetor apart or any of that, and it resolves any non-starting or rough running issues that your lawnmower or small engine has. Now, once you've let it set for 10 to 15 minutes, put your air filter back on. And tilt your lawnmower back up on all four wheels. Last but not least, the start test. Now, don't get discouraged if it doesn't start right away, because even though carburetor cleaner is flammable, it doesn't really like to burn inside of a small engine. So it might take a little bit for it to get worked through. Well, there you go, folks. Those are my 6 maintenance tips to keeping your lawnmower running and or starting it up for the first time in the spring. Hopefully you found these tips useful and informative, and we'll see you next time.